First thing we did is we created a new tool for how people plan their work that sort of uses a lot of the understanding around how do you measure success over time. And so we restructured how we even think out and plan our work and then document it so we can track it more effectively. And then we have we created a new staff activity report that feeds into that as well, so that you can track over time, okay, if this is our goals, these are the action steps you're taking towards these longer goals, how is that measuring out on a weekly basis, how are you able to do that? And then we created a tool for 3 other tools. One was for our local organizing committees, so we created an assessment tool where we were able to sort of create the indicators of a healthy and powerful local organizing committee, and then let leaders sort of wrestle with that and set some goals, and then have some benchmarks that they could hold themselves accountable. That's just within their own local organizing committee. The kind of what's the type of diversity in terms of your leadership team that you want to have? What's the sort of discipline you want to have in terms of your meeting and activities? And then we created a separate tool for our campaigns, and that's sort of what we developed, this master sort of calendar, where we look at, okay, what's the big vision for this campaign? What are the core benchmarks and sort of a time frame from that? And then what are going to be some of the indicators of success for that campaign, and how are you going to measure it? And then, in addition to that, we did something similar within our own organizational development. So we call it Cisco 2.0, which is sort of the 5 sort of key indicators of organizational health that we've developed, and then a strategic plan to get that. And then so we have we've created a time frame and then some of the benchmarks for it, and then we check in on it at every staff meeting.
I had the folks from Blueprint help kind of hold my hand through breaking down, okay, what are the components of our work and our effectiveness in the broader community that would be interesting to try to track, and then what would evidence of that, where would you find evidence of that? So just having a little bit of hand holding and kind of putting together, okay, here's what we're going to be looking for, and here's where we might find it. So just kind of setting up the plan, the research plan.
Leadership development it's our heart and soul. So how do we measure that? We needed to think concretely about how can we measure that? What are the key indicators? What are the key benchmarks that we're looking for? So there are so many things that leadership development is so complex, and it's so individualized. And so we had to have these really in-depth conversations, both with our consultants, Blueprint, as well as within our staff team, and then with our grassroots leaders as well, saying what are the key aspects of the 20 skills that we want everybody to have, and of the zillions of experiences and lots of different kinds of understandings. How do we articulate, how do we identify some concrete ones that we could actually measure? So that was a really messy and complex process, and one that took us a lot longer than we thought. But the whole process was very meaningful and very rich in terms of us developing a stronger understanding of what we're doing in leadership development, and then forcing us to think about what are the critical elements that we can measure.
And then really a big sort of just going through all my files, doing a lot of photocopying. I got the person in our office to photocopy probably half of my records from that year that I was organizing on the healthcare. And then I really needed to sit down and I do remember there's probably almost a week or a few days anyway where my living room floor was completely covered with pieces of paper, because I would put things, this shows this, and this shows that, and this shows this, and what does this show, and oh yeah, this is, so really just kind of trying to get the document sorted into some thematic shape that then I could, I annotated everything so that I could find it and refer to it, and then basically said, okay, well, here's why this stack of documents holds together and has meaning, and here's the meaning that it has, and now let's move on to this next pile of documents, and here's the story that this part tells. And those stories were partly guided by the framework that we'd set up ahead of time of what we're looking for. It's, we're looking for, how effective were we in working in collaboration with allied organizations? What was our impact in the media? How did we, pull groups of people together in large numbers to, get politicians to come, respond to us.
The process we did was we were able to partner with, externally with people at Blueprint and began doing, I met with them and talked with them individually, and then we were able to do at a staff level some reflection and learning, and then we invested some time initially with our board, with sort of our core team of leaders, and then we began to incorporate the tools, kind of experiment with them in sort of local settings. So like at local organizing team meetings, we would have people kind of begin to do some goal setting and we sort of developed a template for them to look at, like what are their sort of concrete outcomes going to be like, how are their indicators of success, and how are they going to be able to measure this, and began to kind of experiment with it there. And then we began to do this both and used it as a tool within our strategic planning process. So we call them leaders summits. They're sort of regional gatherings. And we do a strategic planning session every 2 years, and so we used it there, and it just really gave people, I think, some tools that they could grasp more clearly, and we sort of kind of made it through it so that at every level of the organization, people had exposure to the tools, and we were able to provide feedback, both on how effective they are and how we can improve them.
There are all these things we want to document: how many meetings people are going to, what different roles and skills they're demonstrating, different levels of understanding, and so we started out with this spreadsheet of we want to document every time an individual leader does X, Y, and Z, and we quickly became really got headaches because the spreadsheet became so big and so complex, and so then we realized we need something simpler. We need something that is really manageable in the hectic life of community organizers who are out in the field. And so what we came up with was we needed an online tool, so we weren't constantly all working with different spreadsheets that didn't sync and that kind of thing. So we reached out to a technology consultant who helped us to really walk us through what do we need to achieve, how do we make it easy for community organizers. And so he set up a system for us that's on cloud computing or whatever, that our organizers can actually enter information on their iPhones when they're out meeting with people in coffee shops or at congregations or in their homes. Going to something that was an online tool, online base where everybody was inputting into the same system in a really user-friendly way, was critical for us to move from idea to real implementation.
I think we were looking at the sort of the regular activities in our organization, that we do have these weekly staff reports, so that there could be an opportunity in the course of regular staff reports that organizers could reflect on certain leaders' capacity to achieve certain criteria in certain abilities. And then we also have regular leader assemblies where we felt that could be a natural place where you could just do some kind of self-reporting, reflective questions for leaders to think, report back on their experiences on these different skill categories. The organizers' self-reflection fit naturally into our normal rhythm of work, and having leaders self-reflect fit naturally into our normal pattern of work. And then we also, to have a more kind of objective measure, for the sake of this assessment, tried doing a series of structured interviews around the criteria that we'd set up. So we trained a handful of leaders and then a couple staff to sit down with other leaders who we were interested in kind of going more deeply